On this Friday night, a plea deal for the Ontario man who peddled poison online. What Kenneth Law has pleaded guilty to instead of murder after helping people in Canada and around the world die by suicide.
This right here is trauma breeding trauma.
Reaction from the victims' families. Canada enters technical recession territory. How the Bank of Canada might react. Blue Origin's fiery failure.
That is crazy.
What the explosive setback means for the company and NASA.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. An Ontario man who sold poison to people around the world has pleaded guilty. Kenneth Law admitted in court to aiding and abetting the suicides of 14 people in Ontario. In exchange, the prosecution withdrew its murder charges. Police believe he shipped more than 1,200 packages containing sodium nitrite to people in at least 40 countries. Eric Sorensen has the details and reaction from victims' families.
Today is heavy.
For Kim Prosser and many others, it was a very heavy day. Her teenage son, Ashton, died by suicide 3 years ago.
3 years of uncelebrated birthdays.
Grim accounts were read out in this Newmarket, Ontario courthouse. 14 from Ontario, close to 80 from the UK, all pointing to 60-year-old Kenneth Law. They died in parks and homes, hospitals and hotels, in bathrooms, bedrooms, and in hallways, often found by family members, sometimes by strangers. It all came to light after an investigation by the Times in the UK, who tracked down Law. Police say while he lived in this Mississauga home, Law shipped sodium nitrite and other items to vulnerable individuals in many countries from one Canada Post Office box. The Crown Attorney read the circumstances into the record, concluding each with one key agreed-upon fact. It is admitted that his or her death was caused by the consumption of the product sold by Mr. Law. Asked in court if he admitted to those facts, Law said, "I do." Facing delays and other rulings, the Crown believed murder convictions were unlikely, so murder charges were dropped and Law agreed to plead guilty to 14 counts of counseling or abetting suicide.
Well, I don't know the full story of how this plea deal came to be.
The father of a 21-year-old victim suggested it took too long to prosecute the case.
Esto es como...
Leonardo Bedoya called it a disgrace that the accused wouldn't face the victims. He worries that online platforms continue to abet suicides.
It's immensely frustrating.
David Parfett, who lost his son Tom, says lessons aren't being learned, including in the UK, where charges against Law are not being pursued.
That, to me, is also a symptom of our legal system's just not coping with this type of crime, this is unprecedented.
Victim impact statements will be gathered this summer before sentencing in the fall. Kim Prosser says the impact on her and so many others is traumatic.
Ashton, amazing boy. He's so smart.
Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
If you or someone you know needs help, you can call or text 988 to reach Canada's Suicide Crisis Helpline. The service is available in both English and French, 24 hours a day. Canada's economy took an unexpected turn for the worse to start the year, slipping into technical recession territory. GDP declined at a 1% pace in the final quarter of last year and at a 0.1% pace in the first 3 months of this year. Those 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth meet the definition of a technical recession, though many economists aren't declaring one just yet. Heidi Petracek digs into the numbers and what it could mean for interest rates.
On Parliament Hill, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre used StatsCan's latest numbers as cause for a news conference with a message for the Prime Minister.
No more excuses, please. We actually need results.
In question period, Liberals fired back.
But on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we have a plan. We have a plan to make generational investment in housing, in infrastructure.
Economists are quick to point out while Friday's GDP figures indicate what's called a technical recession, it's not a financial disaster.
If this does end up being graded a recession, I'd say it's about a category 1. It's mostly due to the trade battle with the U.S.
Add in the spike in global energy prices fueled by the war in Iran, and it's a recipe for challenging times. Friday's figures show economic growth faltering for the second quarter in a row.
It really means that we were consuming and buying and spending less.
Canada imported more than it exported in the first 3 months of the year, imports rising 2.9%, while exports fell 0.1%.
Trade has been a pretty clear drag on our economic performance, even with the run-up in gold and oil prices.
And there was less spending, too. Business capital investment fell 0.7%, housing investment fell 2%, and government spending also fell 2.5%. And while Canadians spent more for essentials like food, they also cut back on extras like new vehicles and trips abroad.
We saw a slowing in both household consumption as well as investment in different capital assets by businesses and governments.
With the situation all over the world, the gas and things getting up.
Overall, everything's just off the charts.
What this likely will do is add just another layer of anxiety into what Canadians are already feeling.
The data comes a day after the Bank of Canada said the economy is facing a volatile global environment. It predicts numbers will bump up for April, but cautions if world energy markets and the U.S.-Canada trade relationship both worsen, more damage could be done. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
As Heidi mentioned, Canada's economic outlook largely hinges on those upcoming U.S. trade talks, and multiple reports citing unnamed U.S. officials claim the Trump administration has now laid out its demands for the auto sector. The Americans reportedly want half of all new vehicle parts to come from the U.S. in order to qualify for lower tariffs. Mackenzie Gray has the details and reaction from Canada's auto industry.
We want to make our own cars. We don't really want cars from Canada.
It's been a common refrain from the president.
They would, let car companies leave here and go to Canada, but that hurts the United States.
A line Donald Trump has repeated multiple times since returning to the White House, viewed as an ominous sign ahead of free trade talks. But a new report from the Wall Street Journal shows the Americans might be backing down on cars. The Trump administration is expected to propose that 50% of components of any automobile need to be U.S. made to qualify the product as tariff-free. That might sound like a lot, but the Canadian Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association says that's already happening.
In 2019, the average U.S. content in a Canadian vehicle is 38%. Using U.S. data, we crunched the numbers, and that number at the end of 2024 was 50%.
The Trump administration also wanting 82% of a car to either be made in Canada, the U.S., or Mexico, according to Reuters. That would be up from 75% from the previous free trade deal.
There are some off-ramps on this, things that are possible for automotive that are quantifiably beneficial to the U.S., but don't necessarily come at the expense of a Canadian interest.
While those rules could work out for the Canadian auto sector, it's just one of many issues that still need to be hashed out.
Very honored to be able to be President Sheinbaum.
Mexico and the U.S. have started formal trade talks, but Canada has been left out. The Liberals insist informal talks are taking place, but that's not enough for the Conservatives.
Mark Carney has been nowhere and done nothing, while the Mexicans are at the negotiating table eating our lunch on auto negotiations.
Well, these auto proposals are not guaranteed to get into a potential final agreement. You can expect a further list of grievances on Monday, Jeff, when the Americans will formally lay out their trade irritants with both Canada and Mexico.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thanks, Mac. President Trump is once again claiming to be on the verge of securing a peace deal with Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. This morning, Trump wrote, Iran must agree that they will never have a nuclear weapon or bomb, and ships caught in the strait due to our amazing and unprecedented naval blockade, which will now be lifted, may start the process of heading home. Trump then held a meeting in the White House Situation Room to finalize the deal. But tonight, it appears the strait remains blocked, and Tehran is again denying a deal has been reached. For weeks, Trump has repeatedly claimed that a deal was imminent. The latest agreement would reportedly extend the ceasefire for 60 days, reopen the strait, and then begin a second round of talks on Iran's nuclear program. China's foreign minister is in Canada for the first time in more than a decade. The diplomatic visit to the nation's capital is the latest sign of warming relations as both nations look to deepen economic ties. But as David Aiken reports, the visit is also fueling accusations that the Carney government is putting business ahead of human rights.
I have to say that your question is full of prejudice and against China and arrogance.
That was China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi a decade ago, calling out a Canadian journalist. For his first visit back to Canada since then, Prime Minister Mark Carney's officials worked hard to avoid a repeat of that drama. No press conference this time, and the quickest of photo ops.
Thank you, media. Thank you.
For the Carney government, avoiding controversy, at least in public, makes economic sense. Simply put, hundreds of thousands of Canadian farmers and fishers need access to China's market to survive.
Look, in this world, yes, it's the second largest economy, but you need to have a dialogue with China.
But there are concerns that Carney's focus on using China to diversify Canada's trade away from the United States comes at a cost.
You know, we need to stand up to bullies, and China is a big bully right now on world stage.
Canada did send one of its warships, HMCS Charlottetown, through the Taiwan Strait 6 days ago in defiance of Beijing and in support of Taiwan's democracy.
I think we have to be forceful to say we will continue to have exchanges with Taiwan.
It is a tricky balance. China will soon be the world's biggest economy, and Canadian firms are doing good business in China. And yet, agents of Beijing remain accused of harassing Canadian citizens here at home.
We're putting trade and, of course, doing business with China above all else. And unfortunately, we feel that many of the other values that we hold so dear are being sacrificed.
In any event, this 3-day visit by China's foreign minister is clear evidence that the Canada-China relationship has moved to a new phase. There will be risks. There will be trade-offs that, for Mark Carney at least, Canada must manage in order to meet the challenge of a changing world order. Jeff.
David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David. NATO is accusing Russia of crashing one of its drones into an apartment building in Romania. It happened in Galatz, a major port city about 10 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. A woman and child were injured. It's the first time since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine that a drone has hit a densely populated area of a NATO member country. Russia is denying responsibility, and it's unclear if the strike was deliberate. But as Redmond Shannon reports, it's fueling concerns about the war spilling over.
An apartment building in a NATO and EU country. Romanian authorities say this damage in the border city of Galatz was caused by a Russian drone. The country's military says the drone entered Romanian airspace during a larger attack on southwestern Ukraine. This commander stressed Romania is not under attack, but is seeing the effects of the nearby war. The head of NATO, Mark Rutte, led international condemnations, saying the alliance stands ready to defend every inch of its territory. Although the nature of the attack is unlikely to trigger any military response from NATO.
Even if it wasn't a deliberate act, it's part and parcel as a minimum of reckless behavior by Russia. And of course, it's part and parcel of the barbaric war.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he needs to see proof it was Russian, and then said, without proof, it was likely a Ukrainian drone. Hours before, the head of Russia's National Security Council suggested Europeans should brace for more stray drones. Russian and Ukrainian drones flying into NATO airspace are becoming more common. Poland and its allies say a Russian incursion of 19 drones last year was deliberate. And this month, Latvia's government collapsed following its response to stray Ukrainian drones. There is now disquiet in Romania too. Its president heckled as he visited the injured after announcing the expulsion of Russian diplomats. This woman says people in Galatz just don't feel safe anymore. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Blue Origin's explosive error coming up. Why the company's rocket eruption marks a major setback for NASA's missions to the moon. Aerospace company Blue Origin is assessing the damage after one of its newest rockets exploded on the launch pad in Florida last night during a test. The company, owned by billionaire Jeff Bezos, was just awarded a nearly $200 million contract to launch lunar landers in NASA's future Artemis missions. As Jackson Prosco explains, this explosion could mark a major setback for plans to return to the moon.
By every definition, it was an incredible failure on the launch pad as the Blue Origin New Glenn rocket exploded catastrophically. The blast rattled homes and nerves along Florida's Space Coast.
That is crazy and not normal.
The eerie fireball could be seen for kilometers. It happened during a test of the unmanned rocket's engines. Incredibly, no one was hurt.
Every time we launch a rocket, there is always that potential for a phenomenal amount of energy release in an uncontrolled fashion.
Without offering details, Blue Origin simply called the explosion an anomaly, an understatement if there ever was one.
There's one way to launch a rocket properly, and there's 1,000 ways for it to go wrong.
Founded by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, the company has rocketed into the headlines by launching civilians and celebrities on short jaunts into space. But the company's bigger New Glenn rocket is part of NASA's big plans.
America is returning to the moon.
This week, NASA announced the creation of a permanent lunar outpost, with Blue Origin a key player. The company is also supposed to build and launch a lunar lander in the next few years as part of the Artemis missions. NASA says it needs time to assess what the explosion means.
The real question is, could this possibly delay landings enough that the Chinese will end up beating the American allied effort to get there or not? That'll be exciting to see. It's a real close competition.
It's not just worry about the rocket. The blast caused major damage to the launch pad, which could take years to repair. All of it a reminder that spaceflight isn't easy, but even when things do go wrong, it's still spectacular. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
A U.S. federal judge has temporarily blocked President Trump from creating a $1.8 billion settlement fund. That money was supposed to compensate people who the Trump administration says were wrongly targeted by Democratic governments. Trump allies, including those convicted in the 2021 Capitol Hill riots, were expected to apply. A June hearing has now been set to challenge the legality of the fund. Another judge has just ordered the removal of President Trump's name from the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. The ruling stated that Congress gave the Kennedy Center its name, and only Congress can change it. Trump's name was added to the building's marble facade shortly after a vote by the center's board in December. Today's ruling orders that all physical signage bearing Trump's name and any references to the Trump Kennedy Center must be removed within 14 days. Roller coaster rescue still ahead. A Texas theme park ride takes a terrifying turn. The first of 7 people trapped in a cave in Laos has been successfully brought to the surface. 4 others found this week are now set to be rescued tomorrow, and 2 are still missing. The villagers entered the cave to look for gold over a week ago, but became trapped when heavy rain flooded their exit. Well, take a look at this. A roller coaster in Texas malfunctioned, leaving 8 riders dangling about 30 meters above the ground for nearly 4 hours. They were eventually rescued by firefighters, and incredibly, no one was hurt. That roller coaster is now being inspected. The cause is unknown. Breakpoint up next. How the war in Ukraine is looming large over this weekend's French Open. Welcome back. The war in Ukraine is fueling a bitter rivalry at the French Open tennis tournament. A Ukrainian player is set to face off with a Russian competitor on Saturday in round 3. And as Mike Armstrong reports, she's taking a swing at players whom she accuses of supporting the war.
She's been warned and fined, but Alexandra Olenikova won't stop speaking out. After winning her second-round match Thursday at the French Open, she started her press conference by placing a badge on her bag, a symbol used by Belarusian protesters, a way to criticize that country's support for Russia's war in her country.
I mean, I'm sharing the truth. I'm sharing the facts. This is my life, and this is my story, and this is the life of so many Ukrainians.
For only the second time in a Grand Slam event, 4 Ukrainian women have made it to the third round. Each is affected by the war.
Well, I have this picture.
Marta Kotsiak showed a photo of a missile strike near her parents' home the day of her first round match.
If it was 100 meters closer, I probably wouldn't have a mom and a sister today.
The war 3,000 kilometers from Paris has been hard to ignore at the French Open and may heat up even more Saturday. Olejnikova's next opponent is Russian Diana Schneider. Olejnikova has openly criticized Schneider, accusing her of pushing propaganda by participating in a tournament in St. Petersburg, sponsored by Russian energy giant Gazprom.
I think it's the same as playing in Nazi Germany for Gestapo officers.
Now, the Women's Tennis Association has rules against making public comments attacking or disparaging other players. Olejnikova had her prize money cut at a tournament in March, but says she won't stop speaking out. One person in her corner this week is her father, courtside, a serving soldier in the Ukrainian army. He's on leave for the tournament. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Friday. I'm Jeff Semple. And before we go tonight, we wanted to give a shout out to our Donna Friesen, who just won the Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor. The annual awards honor the best in film, television, and digital media. Congratulations, Donna. Look forward to having you back at the anchor desk next week. Tonight's Your Canada is this Inukshuk in Stansted, Quebec. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.